For Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.
Good afternoon and welcome to Engage for Success Radio Show number 615, from 62% turnover to award-winning. Today we're going to be talking about cultural transformation. I'm Jo Dodds, your host for today. I'm an engagement consultant working within the Engage for Success core team. The Engage for Success movement is an inclusive movement committed to the idea that there is a better way to work by releasing more of the capability and potential of people at work. We spread the word about employee engagement and shine a light on good practice, inspiring people and workplaces to thrive. And we're widely supported across the UK, involving the public, private and third sectors. If you go to our website, engageforsuccess.org, you can use the link at the bottom of the page to join our newsletter list, and all our social media links are there too. My guest today is Louisa Hogarty, who's Chief People and Impact Officer for Noble Foods and a non-exec director. So welcome, Louisa. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely. We'll start by telling us a bit about who you are and who Noble Foods are, and then we'll get going.
So I'm Louisa. I've been at Noble Foods now for about 9 years. Always worked in the people space, so HR director by trade. And over the last number of years, I've grown my remit to also include more of the sustainability work, hence the impact element of my role. And I also look after our IT function.
That sounds like a large remit. We'll get on quickly during this 30 minutes because there's a lot to get through by the sound of it.
Yeah. And I say, just in terms of Noble Foods, we are an agri-food business. We centre our business around the humble egg, and we are a vertically integrated business. So we have everything from rearing farms, animal feed, mills, laying farms, packing centres, processing facilities and food production. I've probably missed something very important out, but hopefully that gives you a flavour of what we cover.
Wow, that makes the remit sound even wider now. Yeah, I'm in awe. So Noble Foods returned to family ownership under Sarah Dean. Tell us, and this is 2019, tell us what the culture was like then and what did you know you needed to change?
So our business is over 100 years old. It goes back to 1920 and it's had many different ownership structures over that period of time. But the period just before Sarah purchased the business back in 2019 was one that was very financially driven. So very profit centric, nothing wrong with that, very successful business. However, along that way, we'd lost the pride, the care, the reputation, and the belonging that really makes Noble a fantastic place to work. So my number one objective when Sarah and the business came back into the family ownership is, how do we bring back the culture that they would have seen when her dad had owned the business some years before? And how do we build our reputation and make Noble Foods famous for being a wonderful family business, somewhere where people really thrive and grow?
Wow, so you had that new ownership, you're sort of heading into this cultural change, but how did you actually start it? I mean, that sounds massive and a big challenge to go back to something from the past as well, but in the modern era. So yeah, where did you start?
Yeah, actually that's really interesting, going back to the past, but actually it was just around unlocking the essence of what made us great originally. But I suppose it has to start at the top. So we did have the remit to rebuild the executive team, which did start with the recruitment of a new CEO. And in that recruitment process, we were absolutely focused on the behaviours and the values that we were looking for from that leadership. So really thrilled that we appointed Duncan, who joined us then in about September 2020. And that was, I suppose, the beginning of the journey. So from April 19 to September 2020 was all around finding the new executive to get us started.
And I'm just thinking that was at the same time as COVID as well, so that can't have been easy.
COVID was full on for us. Animals, they keep going, and we're in food, we kept going. It was very much an all-in period of time for all of us. But again, actually gave us the opportunity under that family ownership to really live our future values of looking after our people really, really well through that period of time too.
Yes, yeah. So tell me a bit more about that. You've mentioned values, and you launched your purpose, I think, November 2021. And are the values to care? Is that the sort of title for them?
Yeah, the values spell the word to care. I'll come on to that. So I suppose building culture and how we started about that. Yes, we had a new CEO. That's a great start. But what was really important for us was how we engaged our population through this journey. So we actually assembled something called the NLG, our Noble Leaders Group, which was 40 to 50 key influencers within the business, not necessarily on executive teams, although many of those were too, but people that managed big groups of people that really had a voice across the organization. And we pulled the NLG together to drive the cultural change and give them real ownership on that journey. And the first question we asked them is, why are we here? What do we stand for? What is our purpose? And that was a big question for our business that, a few years ago, it was to make money was the answer. So what's bigger than that? What can we really get behind? And a subgroup from the NLG, 7 or 8 of them, took on that challenge, and they reached out wide into the organisation, interviewing key stakeholders and colleagues to say, what makes a difference for you? Why do you turn up for work? What should we be here for? And there was various themes that came through. And what was really, when our purpose then came to be, which was as simple as we're here through nourishment, so really healthy protein and nourishment, but for people, animals, and the planet. So our purpose was born to better nourish people, animals, and planet. And today, everything we do hangs off of that. We mentioned impact at the start, and we actually publish an impact report every year. And our impact journey is under people, animals, and planet, just as an example. So
I love
the
the
next
word nourish as well. I mean, aside from the connection to food and growth and good stuff and everything else, it's such a lovely word.
Absolutely, it's we nourish careers, we nourish people, we nourish animals. It really does. We do what it says on the tin. So
Lovely.
our values then, we'd had a few different iterations of values over my nearly 9 years, and they were all words on a poster on the wall. And what did it really mean to be part of the Noble family? And so a separate subgroup from the NLG, they took on the mantle to say, right, let's establish what our values are. And they interviewed even more people in the organisation than the purpose group did. I think there was a little bit of competition. But again, fantastic themes that came through, and they did some really great research. And care was the foundation of everything that came through. But was care really a value? That's just who we are. And then we also had the word family. But what do you mean by family? What does it mean to be part of the family? So digging that bit deeper. So our values spell to care. I won't lie, there was a few jiggery pokeries to get an acronym out of it. But I would challenge anyone to go into any area of our business, and they are known. So we have together, ownership, courage, action, respect, and excellence. And courage was one that we, as a leadership team, actually put into the mix, because C was care originally. But as much as you want to represent the values that you have in your organisation today, we also wanted to challenge ourselves for the future. And we knew that courage was a muscle that we needed to grow, and still is. So that nice balance of being authentically us, owned and driven and identified through our people, but also with that future lens as well.
And how did that land, given all the research and the fact that that was, as you say, sort of leadership driven? And sometimes, you go and do a lot of research and you sort of create something and still half of the people don't agree with it because they said something different and all that sort of stuff. In this case, you've given something into the process as well. How did you then introduce that to the organisation so that it was something that everybody agreed and lived by?
So we are massive fans of using the power of telling stories in our organisation.
Mhm.
And we used a story framework, and we worked really closely with the storytellers, who are a fantastic organisation. And they helped us write our story over this same period of time. Again, multiple inputs into that. And chapter 5 of our story was all around how are we going to do what we want to do, which is where the values came to life. So in 2021, I think it was, we had our first conference, and we launched our noble story, and we launched our purpose and our values, and we had a completely new look. We ripped up the old branding for Noble Foods, and we had a fresh new look as well. And this was really the new beginning, that moment where we brought everybody together to say, this is the direction we're going in, this is what we believe in, this is what we're working hard to achieve. And the values came out of that, and we told the story of the values through real examples that we'd collected along the way from the research.
I love all of that. Often this sort of work happens, but it's still a bolt on to everything. It sounds like it was a real fresh start with everything that you did all at the same time.
Yes, it was. It was a fresh start, but we were also very intentional. When you're communicating, and you'll know this, Jo, when you're communicating in an organisation, we are sick of it, and they haven't even heard it yet. So in every comms that we wrote, there was bold italic use of any time we used a value. We challenged ourselves in every message. How do we link it back? We really repeat. We kept it simple. So at that time we launched the values, it was very simple statements of intent. And then over the next few years, we then developed the behaviours that sat underneath it. So it's sort of grown over time. But making it so memorable, and that to care acronym, and care, like I said at the beginning, being the really core piece of DNA that came through from all of the interviews, it's something's clicked. I wish I could bottle it.
Yes.
But it just clicked.
Yes, yeah. So you started this in 2019. You sort of launched the purpose values in 21, and we're now 2025. What results have you seen over that period of time as a result of what you've done?
Firstly, when you're never finished, so we're not at the end of the journey by a long way, but we're really encouraged by the progress that we've made. Duncan and I will often sit and we'll reflect on the last 5 years, thinking, oh, would we have been further on by now? If only we had done this, or what about if we could have? But you can only go as fast as the organisation's willing to go. One of the things that we have been really consistent about over the last few years is we've surveyed annually using Best Companies Index, and that's a really good marker for how we're doing, how we're listening, how we're improving, what messages are getting through, where we need to work harder. And when we first started with Best Companies, we had about 53% of our population filled in the survey. When we surveyed this year, in May, we had 80% of our employees filled in the survey, which is fantastic. I'm less worried about what the result is. It's around people being willing to tell us what they think and tell us the views. That said, we had a 20-point improvement from last year to this year, as an example. And over the period of time we've been running that, we've improved significantly, and in absolutely every single area of that survey. So it's definitely working. Often when you get more employees fill out the survey, your results go backwards. So I was really thrilled that we hadn't, we didn't. But also just in terms of business results, we have had fantastic growth. We've had turnover growth, we've had profit growth, we've had employee turnover reduction. All of the metrics over this period of time tell a very compelling story that that culture really does drive your business.
And the sort of period of time, and people talk about cultural transformation, it's quite often seen as a sort of finite, project for the next 12 months or so, or whatever it might be. This has been quite a long journey, and as you said, it's not finished yet. Why do you think it's so important to have that sort of long process and a sort of long-term view?
Well, for us, being a family business, everything's a long-term view. We have to sustain this business for the next 100 years and several generations of the family. So a quick fix isn't going to work. It has to be deeply embedded and ingrained. But people change, environments change. You've got to stay agile. I don't think this job will ever be done. Maybe the need for such significant change will be less, but you have to be deeply listening all the time, constantly reviewing, listening to the feedback, tweaking, adjusting, and responding. And only by doing that will you keep going in that positive direction. And if I take an example, our community impact, which was quite we've always had some community impact, but that's the need to do more of that, and the passion from our people to get involved in that is growing year on year. So we need to listen to that and understand that's important to them.
You talked about the Noble Leaders Group, and it seems that was a big part of your success. And I'm actually quite intrigued about the fact that it wasn't just leaders. It was you used the word influencers, and that we've had people on the show in the past talking about the key to cultural change is to find the people who influence, because regardless of who you think's influencing, there are people out there that are, and if you're not talking to them, then often that sort of causes an issue. Tell me more about how that actually was set up and how you found those people, and how you sort of articulated it so people understood why it was those people and not other people, and so on.
Yeah, so we're not a huge organization. We know everybody. We're sizable. We've got about 1,500 employees, but we're not huge. So you know who those influencers are, and certainly through our leadership team, we had identified them. It was actually quite difficult to explain why somebody was in it. And in fact, that was a question we were asked quite a few times, and we probably messed up the answer to it on more than one occasion. But we explained it that these are influential people in our business that may or are likely to manage larger teams. They connect us with our frontline employees, importantly, or they lead functions or input into policy development. So they were the areas of influence. How did we get them on board? We made it special. We wrote them an invitation to join, and we set out the fact that we had a strategic journey that we were on, business plans, financials to deliver. But there were certain projects that would unite us across the group, and those would be one of delivering cultural change, of which we need to pull together to work on together, and we would really like your input in those. There were some very traditional members in that group that had served for many, many years with the organisation, and they were very important to take on the journey because, like you say, they are the louder voices when it comes to driving the change. And for the values group, we had a few people in the values group that had been here, seen it, worn the t-shirt and seen the last umpteen iterations of those values. And it was really simple. We said, we know you've been here and worn the t-shirt, and we don't want to do it again. We want to do it properly. And actually, to do it properly, we really need people like you. And they loved it. Right, we're going to do it. Not on my watch. Is this going to be another poster on the wall? I'm going to make it real. So giving that ownership and realizing the value that they can bring and bringing them closer was absolutely key.
It's funny, I was debating, should I ask you, were there people on there influential who maybe weren't quite so positive sometimes? And
Absolutely.
you've really well described why. Often it's people who are experienced and have been around and have set views because of what they know and everything else. And as you say, it's about engaging them, isn't it? And giving them that opportunity.
They are your best change agents. They are your best change agents, and they care deeply. It's just unlocking it.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. So Noble Foods, as you've told us, is a family business. It's fourth generation and now back under family ownership. Interestingly, firstly, I think that there's stats, aren't there, that say not many family businesses reach this generation and continue successfully. So you're probably hitting out of the park straight away, I would imagine. I haven't seen the recent stats, but I worked for a family business a good few years ago, and I remember, knowing it was quite unusual.
Yes, after the second generation, the numbers dwindle for sure.
But how does that shape your approach to the culture? How does it impact the business compared to a business that isn't family owned, perhaps, and especially going through this sort of transformation?
I think I mentioned it earlier. It's about long-term view. So we're not driven by stock market. We're not driven by shareholder quarterly returns. We are driven by having meaningful purpose and being sustainable for generations to come. And we are so fortunate to be in that situation, and fortunate to have an owner who believes in business for a force for good and believes in the long term. So I find myself feeling very lucky that I'm in this situation, and we can really invest for longer term sustainability.
And what does that mean in terms of, if you were to sort of be talking outside of family businesses and sort of selling the concept of it? I'm going off piste here. This wasn't the question we discussed, but
Okay.
what's the sort of sales pitch for the advantage of having a family business with that view of the future compared to some of the other, as you say, maybe venture backed or shareholder type businesses?
I think you make decisions for the right reasons, where external and often financial pressures will cloud judgment or focus thinking, perhaps not always in the best way. We aspire to be a B Corp, and we're chugging along the journey and hopefully very close to getting to that destination. And business as a force for good, that is what B Corp obviously stands for, I think would be very aligned to my pitch of family business as well. So if you want to be a successful business and grow, but reinvest that in things that make a real difference to all your stakeholders, not just the financial ones, then I think that's what will become a very meaningful business of the future, and one that the younger generations want to work for.
How much of, if I were to talk to the people that work there and ask them about their situation, how much of it would be about it's a family business? How much would it be about the purpose and the values, or other things?
Oh, well, being completely across the UK in multiple different locations, I think it would massively depend on where you turned up. On the agriculture side of our business, hugely family orientated. In our packing centres, we're very they've been there a long time, are at the core of the business. It's hard to everyone would know we're a family business. Everyone understands or would have know Sarah. We go live sometimes on our internal comms platforms, and people can ask her questions. She's visible around the business. I'd say the values would be the part that comes out the strongest, and the purpose in the management role is very clear. I think we're still working really hard in linking everything we do every day to that purpose for everyone in the organization. But things like our impact report, which we launch every year, which is on our website, goes to start telling some of those stories and how it all does come back to better nourishing people, animals and planet.
So 5 years is quite a long time, and it's all sounding very positive. I can't imagine you haven't had some challenges along the way. So tell us a bit more about that, what you've learned, and maybe what
every
didn't go
day's
quite
a challenge.
well.
Every day's a challenge. I think I mentioned earlier, when I look back, Duncan and I are very hard on ourselves, and we always feel we could have gone faster, could have done more. you're never satisfied of where you are. One example that comes to mind in particular was we had an absolute famine with regards to learning and development for many years, where we had literally no development, and then we switched on the tap. So we went from famine to feast, and I was really excited, loads of development opportunities, and we had the whole of the NLG on a program that over 18 months, 2 years, we were going to fully immerse them in leadership. 6 months in, the NLG is saying, stop. This is too much. It's blowing our minds. We can't take it all on board. We're learning too much. And we had to really listen to that and think, okay, we need to go slower. We need to reinforce, going back to that repetition point.
Yeah.
We need to stop. We need to rewind, elongate it, cut it out, redo it, reinforce it, do action learning around it. And I think sometimes your ambition of what you think can be achieved, because on paper it can, with the reality of how it actually hits the business in quite lean teams that do have a day job to do as well. You just need to be really stay tuned in. We also had a situation where the NLG itself had sort of reached a maturity of, why are we even coming together 3 or 4 times a year now? Because we've done the big ticket items. So again, facing into that, saying, okay, how do we use this group differently going forward? So now we just had our conference last week. There's now 120 people at our conference, a wider group. And then we run just 3 projects a year where we ask for volunteers out of that wider group, instead of it being this unique, smaller group, because we evolve and we change and we listen. So, and some of those days where you get the feedback that isn't wonderful and what you want to hear are hard days, but that's why we have to keep agile and keep looking forwards.
Yes, and as you say, the whole listening piece, and demonstrating that you are listening. I mean, that's a great example of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we've got 3 minutes left. You've been doing this since 2019, as we said, or this bit of it. You were there before. You won the Leading with Purpose Business Culture Award in 2024, and you're shortlisted for 5 awards this year. What happens from here? What's next?
What is next? More of the same, I think. More development in particular. So as we really now nourish the leaders for the future is very key for us. So we've invested significantly in our future talent development, more on our impact journey. I think I've already plugged my impact report a few times, but please do read it. It's a really wonderful read and something we're massively proud of everything that we're doing for people, animals and planet. So I think for us, more of that. Hopefully we'll reach the dizzy heights of a 1-star employer through BCI over the next year or so. And we'll get to that B Corp Holy Grail, which hopefully is not too far off.
Lovely. Thank you, Louisa. It's been so interesting talking to you. I said at the beginning or before we came on that it's always really good to get sort of real practitioners on the show to hear about real stories, and this is a great one to have heard about. So thank you so much for sharing it. Any sort of final thought from you as to people listening to this wanting to do something similar? You got a minute. No pressure.
The best cultural change is always when it's the idea of the people and not the idea of the executive. So the more voices, the more people you can get involved in the journey, the better.
Lovely. Thank you. Brilliant ending. Thanks, Louisa. So next week we have Andy Gorham back, and he's talking to David Frost, who's Group People and Organisational Development Director at Dole PLC, and they're going to talk about the design and implementation of global development programmes.
Engage for Success Radio, raising the profile of employee engagement and shining a light on good practice for people who believe there's a better way to work.